Hello, and welcome to episode 84 of Trails in the Pod. I'm Colin, and that's Kevin. And guys, weird stuff's happening. Crossbell, they're entering an election. The world's going topsy-turvy. It's why I'm giving the cold open. But I got to know something, Kev. If you were a Crossbellian voter, what would you vote for? Would you vote yes? Would you vote no?
I would vote for independence, even though it's an unknown, even though it's a leap in the dark. I think it's fairly clear and conclusive. The current status quo is not helpful to Crossbell in the short term, in the long term. The paradigm needs to be shifted. We need a new way of governing ourselves, presenting ourselves to the world. That would inform my vote. How about you?
Well, I would vote yes, mostly because I think that I would be fed up with everybody in Crossbell. But the entire principle of elections can be summarized with one phrase. Vox populi, vox Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God. This implies that we should be listening to the people, for the people are always right. But, Kevin, the question is, are they? For you see, unbeknownst to you, I put up a poll on Twitter, and I asked our viewers, what do you think Kevin would vote? Would he vote yes on the independence referendum, or would he vote no? And so I will tell you the results. We got 24 people voting in this poll.
Yes.
20.8% of our voters think that yes, you would vote for independence. An additional 20.8% of people think that you would vote yes, but you would tell people no, that you didn't vote for independence, even though you actually did. 25% of our voters think that you would vote no, and the remaining 33.3% of voters think that you would vote no, but you would tell everybody that you voted yes.
Question. Did you have an option for show me the results?
No.
So now that could skew it in some ways.
Kevin, we got 24 votes. It's not like this is a massive poll of people all over the country who are curious to know what Kevin thinks. These are people who are invested in you, who have been listening to you for the past year and a half, almost 2 years, actually. When did we start this? We started it in the summertime.
We are coming up.
We might be coming up on a 2-year.
To the 2-year anniversary of this podcast.
That's insane. In any case, so these are people that know you quite well, and yet, most people got it wrong.
Oh, you know how the Doctor Lies is a catchphrase of Doctor Who?
No, I don't know that.
Heaven Lies should be a foundational ethos of this podcast.
Like Kevin lies?
All the time. I can't even tell when I'm telling the truth or not.
You mean like when you make up plot points? Or change what you said previously?
I have never changed what I said in ways that can be quickly verified and brought to bear against me.
Well, I agree, not quickly verified. On
accuse me.
I have deleted all the episodes off my computer to save space.
Our first episode is June 12th, 2022. This will drop June 14th, 2024.
Dude, we're recording on the 12th. This is our 2-year anniversary.
Oh, my bad, the 15th.
Oh, okay. Well, then we can effectively call this the 2-year anniversary mark.
We began with before the prologue of FC. What are we doing? Where are we at the 2-year mark?
Where are we at? I mean, we're doing chapter 3 of Trails into Azure. We still haven't hit the 3D games yet. We still haven't hit the game that you started with, that a lot of people think you can start with, but it is the position of this podcast that you should not.
We haven't even hit the spot in the intermission that you thought was there, but turns out not to be there. It could be in Kuro.
That's true. It's not in Kuro. It's in this game.
Whatever you say, Colin. I believe you. Whatever you say.
So this episode is going to be centered upon days 1 and 2. We're divvying it up this way so that we can talk about things in a bit more depth, and also because if we were doing the full chapter, frankly, we don't have enough time in this week to get an episode out by Friday. So doing it this way means that we will be getting episode out on time, and then we'll be doing days 3 and 4, which I have to say, just by looking at days 1 and 2, look like they're going to be, pretty interesting, just from the things that are being set up here. Kevin, before we start talking about side quests, what are your impressions on these first 2 days? How are you liking the chapter so far?
feels like an extension, continuation of where we were with the end of chapter 2, with the terrorist attack, the declaration, the referendum. It's coming up. Arc and Seal is coming up. It felt until the end of chapter of day 2, it felt almost like a breather, but not in a bad way. We're catching our breath to go gameplay metaphorical exertions, but there was some, I think, very interesting side quests. I felt the main quest of day 2, the end, that was very well done. I felt that really showed a new, interesting take on the society, on Gnosis, on the cult. What say you? I thought it was a really good chapter. I felt gameplay wise, the chapter kind of really wanted you to change up how to beat the cryptids, your party, how to beat the cryptids, how to beat the final boss. I used every member of the SSS, all 6. And I think it's good when that happens.
I think that is a feature locked to nightmare mode, for I change nothing.
Yes.
And I continue to
Yes.
dominate. So let's talk about the day 1 side quests first. Obviously, we're skipping the normal, just go and kill this monster, and then you get a new combo attack. They're good to do, so you get the combo attack, but not really worth it for conversation. Why don't we start with the Counterfeit Caper, which is a return to a side quest that we did in the last game where there was an old lady running a fraud ring, and she's back, and we're going to try to capture her again. What did you think of this side quest, Kevin?
So we went to Calvert on the train, 1. 2, I always like when games bring minor characters, minor plot elements back. It makes the world feel more connected. It's not just a string of here's what happened, you'll never see it again, like it's a diorama or moving diorama or whatever. The actual quest itself was linear. That's not always bad, it's not always good. It is. In this case, it felt kind of unimaginative. For the first one, in 0, you had to put on your thinking cap, figure out what story does not make sense. Where's the inconsistency? Here, I felt it was more stuff gets happened at you, you go on the top of a train, and you fight. So the actual execution I felt was worse or less inspired than the concept.
No, I agree. It's not like there was a whole lot of choices you had to make. If this was in a 3D game, I could see most of the quest being an FMV cutscene, and then you have a couple of fights at the end. But I don't mind that necessarily. I think that there were some interesting parts in the writing here, specifically how Highway was hunting down some of the stragglers from the Republic anti-immigration terrorist group. Like that effort is still happening, right? And it's happening by Highway. It's not happening with Crossbell Police, which is interesting to see. But also there's kind of the whole adrenaline rush coolness factor of Lord being like, all right, guess we're jumping on a train, and then jumping on a train.
It enlivens anything.
One thing that I thought was interesting is that you can get additional DP if you win the final fight without killing the merchant lady, which I found to be very easy to do just by using a combo attack with Randy. I'm really been enjoying, this is true for the whole game, but I've been making far more use of the combo attacks than I had been after learning how OP they were last game. And if you're not using them, Kevin, you really should. They're fantastic.
The combo attacks are wonderful. I use them a lot in the boss fights. I did not do that hidden requirement to bring the lady in without giving her the KO, because I gave my target to her first, knocked her out. Very first, as soon as I could.
You're like, fine, we can kill the old lady, kill the old lady. Is there anything else you want to talk about with this quest? I mean, I think it's kind of cool to bring Detective Raymond out a little bit to get more of his character. And it was kind of cool to see the city of Altair again. It's now the second time in this game that we've physically been in Calvert.
Enticing us with Calvert. And I wonder, if you did not know what Cold Steel would be, did many people think, or would it be, what do you think, where the next arc would be? Calvert over Erebonia?
Frankly, after playing through this entire game, I mean, obviously Cold Steel is already out, so it's maybe I'm biased, but I think it's pretty clear that the next arc was going to be in Erebonia.
What would make you think that over Calvert?
Man, if I told you, I'd be spoiling it, and I can't.
We've had, 1.5, almost 1.75 games so far. But to me, with what I've seen,
Yeah.
I would have said you can make the argument either way. I guess maybe the only thing making me think Irriboni would be we know more about the game and the players. But that said, we knew very little about Crossbell before the Zero arc.
No, and we still know very little about Calvert until you get to the Kuro arc. But I'm just going to highlight the words you say from what you've seen so far.
You know what I have seen
You
though?
haven't seen the whole game. What have we seen, Kevin?
I've seen sea beams glitter at Tannhausen Gate. I've seen ships lost off the shoulder of Orion. And I've seen stranger danger.
Okay, I feel like all of the energy that Kevin normally puts into the cold opens that I have stolen from him in order to present him with a, flash pull, has now been repurposed to this quite clunky transition.
My transitions are beautiful. You know what's not beautiful? Dangerous strangers.
What? So, Stranger Danger is all about how the son of the mayor of Armorica has stopped talking to his father and instead is making plans with a businessman named Minith in order to sell the rights to their honey so that the Quincy Chocolate Candy Factory, a confectionery based in Calvert, can go ahead and use that honey to make sweets. The father,
Colin?
hold on, just let me summarize. The father recruits us to get involved in a family and local business matter in order to investigate his son who is not doing anything illegal, and we agree to it because we can. And also, Kevin thinks that Minith is a hero.
This is two quests. We'll be doing both of them. They follow one after the other together. Now, Colin, dear Colin, I don't know about you, but I happen to disapprove of the apparatus of the state being used to harass private individuals without legal cause, without grounding, all because the oligarchic head of a remote village wants to ensconce himself further into power, wants to keep development at a nothing, wants to make things not just unchanging, but trapped in amber. And Colin, okay, until we find out, yes, this is all a major fraud, most likely, that kind of changes things a bit. But before that, Minith was a morally complex and ambiguous hero.
So that's kind of why I was presenting it as let's talk about the first half first. But even so, I agree. Frankly, no real reason for the police to be involved at this point. Maybe you hire a private PI, but like the police department does not need to snoop on your son for you for no reason. However, why do you want to gentrify Armorica Village? Because it's not like he's just taking the fields. Well, I guess we learned in the second chapter, you're also buying up land. But even if it was just to build a factory, he is he is purchasing the rights to Armorica's best natural resource, all in the guise of helping out the villagers. And maybe it's because I have recently played through Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but this sounds exactly like Shinra buying the rights to the coal mine in the village that Barrett is from, and building a Mako factory, which worked great until it exploded and destroyed the entire village economically wise. So maybe, I think in the JRPG tradition, players might be a bit automatically against this kind of corporate takeover because of the similarity of situations with the Shinra company in Final Fantasy VII.
That's because they're a bunch of NIMBYs. Now, I happen to believe in the sanctity of contract, and if people in free association with one another, they just want to enter into a transaction of goods or services or property, they should be allowed to do so. And if people think that there is a untapped need for more housing or development, and they have the capital to set it up, and the OPEX, the operating budget to maintain it, they just should also be allowed to do so. And that's just what I happen to think. And if they want to take something that is really good, the honey is so good, and allow something special to be had and tasted by others, I think that is also a good enterprise.
Question for you, Kevin. Well, first, later I want you to talk about what the fucking NIMBY is. But even just looking at this one scenario, we may agree on the sacredness of private property or the ability to enter into contracts. Normally, one has to have the rights to private property in order to sign it away. What gives Derek the right to sign away the private property of the government of Armorica Village? Because, as far as I'm aware, he is the son of the chieftain. He's not the chieftain.
We don't know anything illegal or nefarious was being done in the first half. It was just, some hints. So he does not have the right to misabuse public resources, public land held for the public, the common good. I think we can all agree on that. But if he wants to lend his advice as someone who knows the game in Armorica, who knows the people, the players, the strategies, I think that is all well and good.
Sure, but that's not what he did.
Well, no, but no one's perfect.
So I love how you now defend law breaking in the guise of protecting law and order.
It had not broken into law breaking at the end of day one.
But you said that we were doing it together.
Well, okay, so the specifics are a bit uncertain, but the overall thrust of development, and if there is a housing shortage, the best way to do that is to expand the housing supply. Colin, I've seen the houses at Armorica Village. The shitholes. You know what? It should be gentrified. Better people should live there.
I mean, Kevin, this sounds like when I told you that there were 50 people living in Crossbell, and you called me out on not realizing there's probably an abstraction. Don't you think that in Armorica there's more than 3 hovels?
Oh, yeah. I believe there's lots of hovels. And they all suck.
So you've called Derek, no, you haven't called Derek, you called Chief Tulta a NIMBY, which stands for Not in My Backyard. Could you explain for our audience what that means?
It's a shame that I can't show this book on my bookshelf about 3 feet to my left and whip it out like I did from my backpack.
This is very true. This is a book that Kevin travels with wherever he goes, to the point where when he visited me in Ithaca for my defense, and we had dinner with my advisor, or with our advisor, later we came back to my place and he whipped the book out that he had mentioned in conversation out of his suitcase and posed with it so that we could send it to Eric. I might post that on Twitter. We'll have to see.
So it's basically, no one likes change. I get it. I don't like change either. It's scary. But if I don't want to change my condo, I'm not going to. But I don't have a right to say how other people should use their houses, their condos, what they should build on their land. And I don't think I should have that right. NIMBYs are those who want to extend busybodiness into parts of life that aren't their business.
This seems like a very one-sided definition. For example, part of the reason why somebody buys a house or a piece of property is because of the other pieces of property surrounding it. That is something that is taken into account when calculating things like property tax and property value. So it does make sense to be concerned about the area in which you live. I think that's just called being a human being.
Yeah. And it can be a good citizen and engage with others, but understanding that people don't have the right to tell you, Colin, how many sofas you should have in your house or what color you should paint it.
Sure, but if somebody was going to build a factory right next door to me, I might want to raise some concern.
Well, this isn't a land use podcast. If you want land use podcasts, I have several I can recommend.
I'm sure you do. So the other interesting thing about this episode is that while it doesn't state it specifically, the second part of the episode, the second part of the quest, gives us more information about how the Capua family has lost its land because the same guy who swindled the Capuas out of their barony in Erebonia by promising to turn their land into a brewery, and then he ended up stealing the land, is the same guy who's doing the same thing to Armorica Village.
I
Kevin, you didn't get that it was the Capuas. So, um, when you were just told this thing about a family in Erebonia, and then I told you later that it was the Capuas, what was going through your mind?
So what went through my mind, chronological distance, it was over a year, well over a year, since we got the details on the Capua, how they lost their fortune. So I don't, yeah, I would not have gotten it, and as obviously I did not until you made it explicit. I wonder if the developers intended this to be an easy or difficult reference to get. One. Two, I generally I don't like the Capuas or in general villains having really sympathetic stories, even quote redeemed end quote villains. I would have preferred the Capuas lost their land, their title, fortune through their own mistakes, falling, not being pushed, if that makes sense, or going downwards of their own volition. It's taking agency away from them, and Trails has a habit of doing that for villains in general, weird redemptions, what say you?
I mean, I understand, but you have to admit that the Capuas.
But, but, they're titled aristocrats. I'm not going to shed a tear when people who are stealing the fruit of the land from those who kill it get their due.
I love how Kevin is simultaneously a neoliberal and a communist.
I am an old school radical of the early 20th century, like Georges Clemenceau.
I would remind you that we live in the 21st century and you are very idiosyncratic.
I marched the beat of my own drummer.
But you have to admit that I know that you don't like redemption stories, except for when you do. But the Capuas definitely earned it by helping us in the liberal incident at the end of SC. It's not like their pardon was just given out of the blue. Like they actively helped save the entire country.
It was helped. And I think this is one where it was worth it. Redemption, because they weren't, homicidal, psychopathic people. They did a service well in excess of the debit they had accrued, so their credit is well in the black. They weren't evil, just more silly. And so what we get presented with is good. I don't like redemption when it's someone who did a lot of bad stuff gets redeemed through the power of friendship or whatever. It's like, hey, what about that, village full of innocent people he slaughtered? Hey, hey, hey.
You mean like Richard? Not the slaughtering of a village, but of pulling a palace coup and then everybody just being kind of fine with it?
Sins can be forgiving. Crimes must be punished. If he opened his heart to forgiveness and redemption, I would weep with Richard, Colin. I would call him my brother. We would go hand in hand to the gallows, where I would slip the noose on his neck.
If they ever do Game of Thrones again, you should be Stannis Baratheon.
I should, yes.
I do think it's interesting you point out, so we learned about the Capua's backstory back in Trails the Third, and it's not like we've really heard of the Capuas since then. So it's worth it to ask the question, does Falcom expect us to remember it? But to a degree, I think we have to say that they can. We're kind of dancing around here, but on day 2, which is when the second half of this quest and the revelation happens, there's a side quest in which we help somebody from the Capua delivery service help them fix some fuck ups they did on their end by running around the state and doing a few fetch quests, which ends in a pretty interesting way, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But the fact of the matter is that Falcom quite clearly expects us to have the Capuas in mind when that quest happens, because we'll see on the list of quests. Oh hey, we're going to go help the Capuas. It's like meant to jog our memory. Although it seems like with you, it didn't. So when you saw the Capua delivery service, did you remember about Josette and all of them, or did you just, see it as normal?
I did not. I saw it as normal. Maybe the order I did it in, maybe the game wants you to do the package delivery, then the second part of this quest. So you have the Capuas, and then Grimward says, "Oh, this family." But the order I did it in, I did not put two and two together to make four.
Gotcha. So then that raises the question.
Brings a question, which raises the question: does the game have a soft intent in general for the order for these side quests?
An order of in which you should play the side quests. That I kind of don't think so. I do think if you're playing the games in order, in the intended order, and you're playing them relatively close together, frankly, I do think that seeing Capua delivery service on the mission board should be enough for you to remember about the Capuas.
Wait, it was not. It did not say Capua delivery service, though. It was package pandemonium.
Yeah, but if you read the description of which you have to in order to accept the quest, unless you do one quest and then run back to the terminal and accept another one.
Well, or you could skim the descriptions.
Okay, this is like, Kevin, this is like when I assign my students reading.
Don't compare me!
And then when I ask them questions, they say they didn't get it, and it's because they didn't do the reading.
Okay, I did recognize the stupid hat.
Well, that's progress. All right, we should probably stop beating a dead horse. The fact of the matter is that there was a fraudster that we saved Armorica from, and Kevin is conflicted upon the justice of that. So why don't we talk about another quest, A Taste of Crossbell. This quest is given to us by the Crossbell News Service. They're running a special on all the different types of food around town, and they around the state, really. And they want the SSS to run around and try different dishes all across the state so that they can turn it in and write up like a editorial about it. If you want to get full DP on this quest, there's one thing that you have to do, which is head down to the hospital, which the game kind of urges you to do anyway in the intro cutscene of day one, and talk to the woman there in the cafeteria in the inn, because her thing takes 3 days. So you can, if you want to do this right, you have to finish it in day 3, but you can do most of it on day 1, which is why we're talking about it now. Kevin, two questions for you. One, did you try to do full DP, or did you just, do your 6 and then turn it in? And then 2, what did you think of this quest?
I'm going to quote something from a novel. It's called Hero the Nine. It's a part of a series, murder mystery in space, weird shit, all that. Great book. One of the characters says, "Well, I tried, and therefore no one should criticize me." And I think that's an excellent spirit to be in. Before I tell you about this quest, Colin, are you infused with that spirit?
Sure. Let me hear your mindset.
I was playing day 1 in my basement, in my living room. I was about to go tackle some other side quest. I got distracted. I came back. My Steam Deck was almost dying, so I went and did the cryptid quest, and I forgot about this one.
It doesn't. You can still do it.
Well, I don't. Well, let's talk about recipes and food in general, because that's something that when I heal, I buy the tier or the tier packs, or I use arts. I found the HP, the limit, what you get with food, often does not justify it, because I often don't need EP. CP is nice, but when I want healing, I find arts and then the packs much more useful than food. I don't value food much at all. 2,500 for a magic muffin, I need 5,000 at least, with the damage I take in Nightmare.
I will say, in FCSC, I used food. Not necessarily like the snacks, but the sit-down meals were really useful for group healing in a dungeon. But they got rid of those in Zero in Azure. And so I don't really cook that often. I do think that it's a system that we probably underutilize because there are foods that will, in addition to healing you quite well, might also give you very good buffs. But that would require us actually engaging with the system, which we don't because it appears useless, which is kind of a vicious cycle. But I will also tell you that this quest does not involve any cooking. It just involves running around the state and talking to people. And it's not the only kind of quest that we have like that or that we've experienced throughout the game. My question for you, because frankly, I don't know the answer to this, as we've said, this is not the only time that we've gotten a quest that's just like go to every place in the state and talk to somebody. Yes, there are some amusing cutscenes, maybe, but it's not like there's anything new or different or interesting about the quest per se. So why put it in? Like, what are we supposed to get out of this quest in particular?
In Zero, we talked about this a number of times, and our answer was giving us more exposure to the world, making it more lived in and dynamic. Here in Azure, does what we said still hold? I wonder, because we've seen most everything there is to see, the shops, the regions. I'm not sure there's much of new Nox Forest, but it's minor things. Not new locations, not new people. And I'm not sure that I have a very at hand guess. It's not with the monster exterminations. I think the implicit point of that is to make sure we're leveled enough if we're underleveled before the main quest with the combat, if that makes sense. Here, the DP for the inspector rings, it's nice. I don't think there's anything necessary, not even the gladiator headband that gives you more command points in battle.
I think for a narrative purpose, people could say that quests like this make Crossbell feel a little bit more alive because you're constantly revisiting areas. It gives the spotlight to these minor characters that you can have an interaction multiple times throughout both games with like a certain food stall in the harbor district is good for world building. But personally, I think that this quest fails in, well, I can't say that it fails. It does achieve a level of world building like that, which is good. But another quest that's kind of similar to this is the Capua delivery quest, where you have to drive to Mainz and then drive down to the hospital and then you drive back to the residential district in order to deliver some mixed matched packages. And that quest ends with a really interesting cutscene giving us more information on like the Rosenberg dolls and on ghosts and on the ability of higher elements and the relationship between the dolls and the spiritual that feels a lot more substantive to me than Lloyd likes this particular dish, so he writes about it for the Crossbell News. To me, the Capua delivery job is a much more successful attempt at making Crossbell feel like a lived-in place because it accomplishes that with the same mechanics, but also adds something even more interesting afterwards.
And I want to say, I think in general, the Capua delivery quest is good for the content, the style. We get a bit of an insight into how would you ship higher value, low volume goods. And this is one where air service, I think, really does make sense. What we get for what's a smattering of international trade for private, semi-private bodies. And it's funny. I thought the scene with the two nurses, it was very well done.
Mm.
I enjoyed it. I thought the scene in the inn was not as good, but still good. I thought the mix of emotions of styles deliberately contrasting with the dolls and the pawn shop owner was great. Like the spooky stuff, you're not sure what's going on, and the pawn shop owner's like, yeah, can I sell it? That's what's important. It fit what we knew of her, hiring a literal child for an almost arms. Sorry, that's a different store, but it was fun.
And I kind of like the reinforcement of the link between like the Rosenberg factory and spooky shit, whether it's like technology that we see in that day as well, like when we go and talk to York, or if it's the more highfalutin, higher elements are available here, ghost-like stuff. There's something about the Rosenbergs that's tied into all of it. And this quest like points us to be thinking about that a bit more.
I almost think it should have been a required quest.
I feel that. One quest that wasn't required or even made readily available to the player, which means that I did it and Kevin didn't do it, is a quest called Pierre's Marital Peril. Uh, you might remember if you did these quests last game, which I don't think you did, Kevin, is that the vice commissioner of the Crossbell Police Force is a bit of how we say a cuck, not necessarily in terms of being
I did this quest last game.
okay. Also, he's not technically a cuckold, although he thinks in this quest that he is. There's a guy who's been meeting with his wife, which he only finds out about when he sneaks into her purse and looks at her appointment book. And so he thinks that his wife is cheating on him and writing it all down in a unencrypted, not locked fashion. And so, using the powers invested in him by the Crossbell Police Department, he makes the Crossbell Special Support Section spy on his wife for him, which they accept because it's a support request. And we go to a restaurant, and it turns out that the guy she's meeting with is not a lover, but is a real estate agent. Nothing really crooked about this guy. Turns out that the wife had been trading stocks on the side and has gotten so successful at it that she has enough money to go and buy a property in the Michelin Resort. And that once she had done that, she was then going to divorce Vice Commissioner Pierre. However, as a result of this investigation, we snoop in on that final meeting. Pierre runs out, accuses the real estate agent of trying to swindle his wife, and because he is angry and willing to defend her, she reconsiders her desire for divorce. And it appears that from now on, while they have some issues to work out, their marriage is on the road to recovery. So, by means of using state forces for improper means, another marriage is saved and more justice is done.
Again, this should raise some red flags on ethics questions for Lloyd and Co.
No, they even like just push it away by saying, "Well, we're not really beholden to the policies of the police department, so sure we can do that."
Absolutely wild. But also, I don't like how this game portrays the trading day stocks instead of investing in the market as a whole as a potential get-rich-quick scheme. I don't approve at all.
Well, we don't know if it was trading day stocks.
She was actively trading.
Wait, so you've done this quest?
Oh no, from what you said, she was actively trading.
Well, I am paraphrasing. I know that she had done stuff on the stock market and that she got money from it. That doesn't mean that she's day trading.
They should.
Who knows how long ago
They should have specified by saying she got her money by investing in safe, broad market-based index funds or ETFs. That would have been a socially responsible message.
I'm going to kill you.
And again?
No, I'm not saying that on the air. But that I will say that I don't think most people are thinking about that when they are playing these games.
You know what they should think about?
Going to a theme park?
You're right. I was going to say something about killing ET with hammers.
Okay. Because it's looking like since we keep jumping in between side quests on day 1 and day 2 anyway, we might as well just finish up the side quests and then we can talk about if we want to talk main quest or do that another time.
Yeah, let's finish up the side quest and then we can do the main quests another time. I do think there's some interesting elements that are worthy of deeper dive with the main quest for just days 1 and 2 of Chapter 3. This may be the most dissected chapter that we've done for a Kiseki game thus far, for number of episodes.
Could be. We'll have to see. But something that I don't think will take a whole lot of dissecting is the fact that we have a support request to go to Michelin Wonderworld, because the actor who plays Mishy is in the hospital. Tio then learns that Mishy is not real and is played by an actor. It's her first step towards adulthood. But Lloyd is asked to step in on account of his height, not because of physical ability, not because of competency, because of his body type. Did you know that in Disney World, every cast member, well, they're called cast members, every employee that's like public facing at the park, they are not employed as normal standard employees, but they are employed as cast members because by employing them as cast members, you're employing them as actors, and you're allowed to discriminate against actors for playing a role rather than an employee. So that gives them some flexibility in making sure that the right people are in the costumes or in different areas of the park if they're going for a certain theme. And so the same thing is happening here, where Lloyd is being physically profiled so that he can put on a costume. And we have to go around and be abused by members of the public, but be happy about it. And then we have a dance, and we do the dance well. And that's a pretty good summary of that quest. What did you think about that quest, Kevin?
I'm gonna go out in a limb and say something I think you're gonna be surprised at.
Okay.
I thought it's a great side quest.
I am surprised by it. I mean, I liked it, but the entire time when I was playing it, I thought Kevin's going to hate this quest. It seems like both me and the audience have underestimated Kevin today.
Yeah, you should estimate me. Why did I like it? It picks up a through line we've seen with Tio a number of times. She really likes Mishy, but in like a really, I think it's hilarious, straight-faced, very intense, serious kind of way. Like she talks about the gospel of Mishy in the intermission. It's very like making threats to Noel, Joel, to Lloyd. Here, not sure where Joel came from. The like very deadpan humor of this is the first rung of disappointment on the ladder to adulthood about learning that Mishy's an actor. I think it's a really good fit for her personality. I honestly do because it's this childish, really liking of the Disney stand-in in Tio's quasi-adult kind of unsettling way. So it's this straddling the line between childhood and adulthood. It fits Tio's unique circumstances. It it does a great job of explaining, of showing her character more than telling us can do.
That's true. It kind of fleshes.
And it's funny. It's really
Pretty funny, especially like when the actor shows up and he's like this rude, lower class, basically me if I wore a wife beater type of guy. But then he puts on the costume and he's like transformed into Mishy. Kevin, I believe we have one last quest to talk about because we've basically already talked about Package Pandemonium. It's a hidden quest. Inside Scoop the terrorist attack.
I tried to do it.
But you couldn't because you didn't do the first one.
No.
You have to do another hidden quest with Nielsen in chapters prior to do this one. And it's an interview. Nielsen is asking us questions about the political situation around the terrorist attack in the hopes that by phrasing it in his way, we can get some insight into the geopolitical situation between Erebonia and Calvert. And Kevin, I have a confession to make. This sounds like a quest that would be right up our alley, right? Geopolitics, it's our shit. I mean, how many episodes do we have about the trade conference? Like an entire month's worth of content around that one chapter. And normally I would be paying attention. Unfortunately, we are at the point of the year in which many of my international friends are leaving, perhaps just for the summer, perhaps for half of a year, perhaps forever. And so a good friend of mine wanted me to get drinks and dinner with him last night when I was doing it. And I was coming up. This was the last quest I was doing, and then I was going to save and go head down to Red's place for a burger. And I was running a little bit late. So I know that there were insights to be gleaned because I remember specifically Lloyd saying, wow, we've now seen this in a whole new way. But I can't remember what it was.
Jail for Colin for 1,000 years.
I deserve my punishment. So I apologize to the audience if they were jumping at the bit for keen political insight based off of this quest. My personal friendships with a man named Vikram, who subscribes to the podcast, but I don't believe listens to it, just downloads it for our metrics, which I appreciate. That took precedence.
I'm gonna act as if you said something really insightful.
Thank you.
Well, I think it really does a good job of reorienting our perspective on Crossbell's internal politics and how it relates to the external security situation. And I think it's a great wind in our sails moment as we get to the referendum, get to whatever Oregon Seal is going to be doing, whatever shady stuff is going on with Arios and Dieter LaCroix.
LaCroix.
Thank you for that. Dieter Croix?
No, his name is Dieter Croix, and LaCroix is the seltzer.
Oh, yeah, yes, you're right.
I thought you were actually making a joke. I was laughing with you, not at you.
I have a cannon next to me. That's why I got it in my head.
Very nice.
I think we'll put a stop here. We'll be doing the main quests for Chapter 3 at a different time. We just did the side quests for days 1 and 2. This is a really, so far, dense chapter. There's a lot to talk about. Overall, I think it was very successful coming off not just the intermission, but the first full chapter after number 2. It feels like we're ramping up. I think the end of the chapter is going to be something.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the main quest. I think things are ramping up. I gotta say, I'm kind of surprised. Playing these side quests, I didn't think there was actually a whole lot there that we would talk about, but I was wrong. We spent a good hour talking about these.
The Kaseki series rewards deep dives, engaging in good faith with the material in a serious, sustained way, and what better demonstration than the time we spent talking about a package mix-up, about food, about the Disney stand-in, whatever.
But let's not forget the movies.
Yeah, the movies are great.
I said movies. Nimby.
They should burn, and they will.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.